Hello, everybody. Hello, Larry. Um, Sorry about the fuzzy camera here. All right, I'm sorry about my hair too. Nice to see you guys. Um, yeah, so we're gonna have another one, 239. Um, let's see if I can get this to open up a little bit. That's a little better, maybe. All right, hello, Karen. Nice to see you. Um, Anybody have questions you want to get started off with? While we're waiting for questions, I want to just let you guys know the the what do you call it, the um, tonalization method book is just about done, and I would like to invite anybody that's watching this to. I want to have a section in the end of the book. I've got one student that contributed. Um, But any of you guys who are using the tokenization studies and that they're working for you, um, let me know, write, put something together and I'll put it in the book. Okay. Um, so far I've got one student that has sent those in. But yeah, so I do think that, it's not a sales thing, so don't try to do that. I think I mentioned this last week. It's not a sales thing. It's going to be inside the book. By that time, they've already bought the book, right? Um, so it's not a sales thing. It's a um, like a different perspective thing. Like I want people to see that I'm not just saying it works. That there are people who, um, you know, people who actually use it and it works. And you know, so what else? We've got this Christmas book is almost done. I don't know if you guys have checked out the hymn duets. Let me pull this down so I don't look like I'm looking somewhere else. Okay. If you've looked at the hymn duets book, not the not the trumpet hymn duets. It's starting to get a little confusing with all these different titles, right? But the book I just put out, um, it's called Hymns, Unadorned Hymn Duets. If you've seen this, uh, basically what it is a improved version of my, what do you call it, my um, unadorned trumpet hymns. I had to change the name because I don't want people to think that if you um, buy the book, you're getting exactly what's in on my YouTube channel. It's not exact. And the reason it's not exact is because I improved what was there. So now, the reason I'm bringing it up now is because this new Christmas book is the Christmas version of that book. So it's going to be unadorned, starting with the same word, right? Unadorned Christmas Carol duets. Now, originally I didn't want to call it duets. Um, but that's really what it is. There's two trumpet parts. And it's the second part that's got value to it. You can get all the rest of it anywhere else. Okay. Anyway, Larry asks, what is a good trumpet playing volume? Sometimes I find myself playing louder than I think I should be. That's a good question. I'm actually putting out a video soon. Well, I've already recorded it. I just have to edit it and put it up, where we talk about um, how playing too loud will take away your style. And I won't ruin it for you. The video is going to be called something like Swinging Hard or Hard Swinging Trumpet Players or something like that. Okay. Um, and I won't ruin that for you. I'll let you guys watch that. But yes, you can. There's a lot of stuff. When you play too loud, there's a lot of stuff that goes bad. Um, and I might have got a little bit too emotional in the video. And it might have sounded like I was putting some people down. You guys know I don't put people down. But there are some things in the music world, in the music community, that I find repulsive. And I even say in the video that a lot of times people think I'm complaining about the music being too loud, and what I'm actually complaining about is the lack of style. Because if it's too loud, there is no style. Anyway, I'll let you guys watch that. It should be out this week or next week. Hello, Angela. Nice to see you. Huh. I see you changed your title on Facebook. All right. So, what other questions? Yeah, I didn't actually answer the question. What's a good volume to play? Well, that's difficult, isn't it? Because we can't really measure that. So I would say not so loud that you lose the style. If you're playing so loud that the style goes out the window, then that's a problem. And you know what? We see this. I talk about this in the video. We see this on YouTube quite a bit. There's a bunch of guys that, and they're not the famous ones, don't get me wrong. Most of the famous guys don't play like this. But there's some less famous people who have popular YouTube channels. And it's popular because they can play high. But they've got no style, they've got a terrible sound, they don't have phrasing. And yeah, all of that is a problem. All of that is a problem. And we want to be able to have phrasing, we want to have style. But if you're playing too loud, it's not going to happen. Angela asked, my question is, do you know any way that I could increase my breath support? That's my biggest challenge. Yes. This is this is going to sound like it's off topic, but it's not really. There is a guy on YouTube called Wim Hof. I think he pronounces his name Wim Hof, which is, I find that a little disturbing because he comes from, I think he's from the Netherlands. So I've always pronounced his name Wim, W-I-M, I think maybe two M's, Hof. He's got exercises that you can do And they're free on YouTube. You don't have to sign up for his program. Let me see here. He's got a beginner's exercise. And if you do it the way it's supposed to be done, let me put a link to the video. I think maybe the first one. Yeah, that's it. Let me get a link real quick. Sorry about that. I'm going to put this in the chat. Follow his directions. You almost hyperventilate, breathing in and out for a certain amount of time. And then after you breathe out, you hold your breath with the empty lungs for, I think it's like 30 seconds. And then you breathe in, and then you hold your breath for 15 seconds. Just whatever the times are on the video, just follow that. And also, Wim Hof is in the book that Larry's talking about here. I have that book. Let's see if I'm right. Let's see if I'm right. Maybe that's not the one. But yeah, there are. What I try to do with all of this is I try to avoid the ones that make it quasi-religious. That's why I like Wim Hof. It's not religious. Now he tells you to relax and stuff like that, but he doesn't turn it into a mindfulness. At least that's not how I see it. So I see when we look at the art of breathing, I see some of the other things that come up are talking about mindfulness. Let me talk to you guys about why I don't like mindfulness in the context of music. The best performances you will ever do are the ones where your mind is turned off. Okay? The best performances you ever have will be those performances that were so automatic that you didn't have to try. The earliest time this ever happened with me was in junior high school. I had a solo. I don't remember what the song was. But I practiced it and I practiced it and I practiced it. I practiced it. I practiced it. Hey, we got the fuzziness to go away. Woohoo! So yes, I practiced and practiced and practiced. And then the concert came. I remembered standing up. When I sat down after the solo, this friend of mine on my right was patting me on the leg saying, "They're clapping for you, they're clapping for you." I blacked out. I blacked out. When I came to again, they were all standing up, applauding for my solo. That doesn't happen if you're being mindful. I believe that the only time we should ever be mindful in our practice is when we're doing something new, something we've never done before. So, for example, the first 2 or 3 times, you know how I tell you guys all the time, use a proven practice method, a proven practice technique. Well, there are all the proven practice techniques have repetition in them. So the first time you play something uh, new that you've never played before, you should be looking at it and being certain that what you're about to do in those first 2 or 3 repetitions is correct. But after that, the objective should be mindlessness. And I know this will upset a lot of people, but that should be our goal. Mindless performance, not mindful performance. Mindful performance will always destroy your performance, because mindful performance is distracting. There's a book. I've told you guys about this book. I'm trying to see if it's up there. It's a book called Choke. I've put links to the book. I've put links to it. Here it is. This book basically confirms what I'm telling you right now. I'm going to put the link. This book is basically telling you what I'm telling you now, that your best performances on. She splits performance into 2 categories. The first one I think she calls academic. So the sciences and stuff like that, it's not the same. If you do things automatically in science, you're going to get something wrong. If you do things automatically in math, you're going to get something wrong. So when the time to be mindful when you're learning is in those non-athletic. So she has academic on one side, athletic on the other side. And the athletic stuff, interestingly enough, includes 2 things that are not athletic. One is speaking languages. You mess up when you try to speak a language when you try to do it mindfully. And the other one is music. You mess up when you try to be mindful when you perform. So athletics, music, and speaking languages, those are three things that have to happen automatically for you to be the best of the best. It has to be automatic. Hello, Mr. Lampy. Nice to see you. So, and that's what she says. You know, the thing I liked about the Choke book is that it confirmed all the stuff I figured out as a trumpet player, as a teacher. There's a bunch of things in there that I had already figured out on my own. But it was nice to have scientific she's a neuroscientist, research scientist. And the stuff that she shares in the book are, um, the stuff she shares in the book are confirmation that I've been on the right track all this time. And so, so when we're talking about doing breathing stuff, I would try to avoid the mindfulness breathing. Try to avoid that. The breathing stuff that I shared with you on the link is more mechanical. There's no new age stuff attached to it. No religious stuff. Nothing like that. At least not to my knowledge. Maybe Wim Hof is kind of like, I know he's kind of hippie-like. So maybe he himself teaches some stuff that might lean towards Zen, which I don't have a problem with that, just not in the context of the breathing exercise. So yes, now I'll tell you what else not to do when you're concerned about breath capacity, breath support, and all that stuff. There have been people in the past that suggested filling your lungs up as far as you can and then bending over and touching your ankles. And the idea is that the pressure from leaning over in the lungs will stretch your lungs out. But I've seen research that says when you do that, you cause scarring inside the lungs. And in the long run, you will create less breath capacity, not more. So please do not do that old-fashioned exercise. I'm not going to say who was teaching it because he was kind of famous at the time. But the research has been done, and that kind of exercise will cause your lungs to form scar tissue, and we don't want that. Okay. What else? What other questions do we have? I'm very excited about these books. I think I told you guys I've got 3 books that are done, basically finished. I just need to get enough time to do the final stages. I can get the content done. It's easy for me to create content in the dialysis chair. Editing is a whole different thing. I have to have quiet. And for those of you who might not know, the dialysis centers are not quiet. They're actually very loud. They have to be loud so that when the machines start to misbehave, the nurses can be informed and then they come right away to fix whatever's going on. So, yeah, the editing time now is where I'm struggling just to get time, because once I get home, there's all these other things I've got to get done. So, but yes, I will make time to get those edits done and get the books out. I have 3 books that are done. The Pioneer book in the Trumpet Chops book series, that book is done. There's the Christmas book. that I was telling you guys about earlier. And then there's the book with um, the method, the whole tonalization method, not tonalization study. I've asked Pearl to make a different looking cover so that it's not confused with the tonalization studies. This is the book behind the tonalization studies. This is the one that explains to you where those studies came from and what to do with them and what to do with the method beyond just the scales. So I'm very excited about all three of those books. And as soon as they're done, I'll put some other books up too. Angela says, I have noticed that when I play higher notes, E, F, and G, I tend to wear out and deflate faster. It is tough, and I need to figure out how not to get so tired after playing higher notes. Yeah, that's actually kind of unusual what you're talking about there, because what normally happens is as you go higher, you have more air because the notes require less air as you go higher. What most people run out on is the low notes. So I'm trying to think, are you playing super loud to get the higher notes? Because that could cause the air to go away. But yes, that's a very unusual thing. Oh, I see. So you're playing really, really loud up there. Then you would benefit from that spider long tone exercise that I put out. Let me put a link for that. I did find a typo. I'll have to try to redo that. There's one note that's like 2 octaves higher than the other note. That's me trying to get used to this new software. All right, here's the link to the spider long tones. Larry says, how does one come up with ideas and or motifs in improvisation? I can learn scales, but the difficulty is coming up with ideas, melodies, etc. The way I teach the jazz improvisation is more motif based. It's kind of hard to explain. Let me grab my Omni book is sitting here on the floor. And I know you guys have probably all heard this before, but maybe Larry hasn't. So let's go through it again. When we're talking about jazz language, a lot of people like to say that your jazz solo, your improvised solo should tell a story. Well, I like to use that analogy as a way to explain to people what jazz language is. So, if you have the solo is the story, and we're talking about spoken word, it's a little bit more complicated if you're, and you'll see why. If we're talking about written word, it's a little bit more complicated. Anyway, so let's say in fact, you know what? I have a thing here. I can share screen. Let me do that. So where is that button? There it is. Share screen. Here we go. All right, so let me start a new image. Where is it? I think it's the button is covering it. New drawing. There we go. Okay, so let's do it this way. Here on this side is the story. On this side is your solo. Your solo should tell a story. So if you have paragraphs in a story, what then is the equivalent to paragraphs in your solo? I'll go ahead and tell you what it is. We're going to say choruses. What is a chorus? For those that don't know, every time you go through the chord progressions for the song, it's one chorus. Okay. What do we break in a story? What do we break paragraphs down into? Sentences. Pardon me if I don't know how to spell. So what is the equivalent of a sentence in your solo? We have phrases. Some people call them licks. I know phrases sound a little bit more academic, but to me it's just more serious, right? Then the next one, sentences are reduced to words. We're going to skip that on this side for now. We'll come back to that. And then finally, we have, this is where I said it's simpler to talk about spoken word. All right. So we have syllables. And the obvious equivalent over here is the actual notes that you play. So there is something between phrases and notes. That's the equivalent of the spoken word. Okay? And that thing is what we call a motif. In this context, most of the motifs that we're talking about are 2 beats and 1 note long. 2 beats plus 1 note. And those motifs are the jazz language. So when you want your music, your improvisation to sound like jazz and not like a bunch of scales, you incorporate motifs. And so this is why I have let's unshare that now. This is why I have the Omnibook out, because it's a great example of how these motifs work. So when we look at the first page, the first song is confirmation, but the second page is the solo. And if we look at the solo, The first distinguishable. Now there are other motifs that come before it, but they're not interesting. Just like when you speak, there are words that you say that are not interesting. The word the word and, the words, different levels of uninteresting, right? Some, it. You see what I'm saying? There are words that we speak when we tell a story that are just uninteresting. So you don't, and you almost don't have to learn those words because you're going to be saying them thousands of times a day anyway, right? So the first uh, worth mentioning motif is in the second measure. Look in the second measure. We've got the second half of that measure. That should be a D sharp, not an E flat. D sharp, C, A, B flat, B, and that B flat should also be a A sharp. But enharmonic is okay. There are that particular, and I'll let you look it up yourself if you have an Omni book. That exact 5 notes as 8th notes exist exactly in measure 16 of the solo. Those are lines. I'm sorry. So that the second half of the second measure on line 2, I didn't realize those were lines. Same thing. The second half of the second measure on line 15. Same exact notes. How he gets to it and how he departs from it is different. But and that's how we know that it's working like words, is because you can use the same word again, but you're not going to use the same sentence. And that's what's happening here. The first lick he plays, that's different from those. The central to both of those licks is that one motif, same exact motif, and that's without looking at transposed versions of it, because there is a transposed version in here, and that's without also looking at slightly varied variations of it. That particular motif is saturated throughout the entire Omni book. Some motifs are used more often, other motifs are used less often. And so where would you get these from? You could get them from 251 licks. I have a whole system that I teach for this stuff that I do instead of 251 licks. They're actually better than 251 licks. That said, I have a student in California that was auditioning for California All-State, and I wanted him to know at least a little bit about how other jazz teachers teach. So we started with him doing a sheet of 251 licks, and I found that sheet to be so disturbing that I decided to write my own 251 licks. And then we did that for him to prepare for that All-State, the Jazz All-State at California. And while I was doing it, I thought, you know what? This is actually a good first step for people that want to learn. So if you guys want, you would have to tell me, because I don't want to do this work if nobody buys it, right? But if you want to spend like $550 on my original 251 licks, and what's the difference between my 251 licks and the ones I don't like? My 251 licks are chock full of these motifs. It's basically 2 pages of these motifs in context. You know how they say when you're trying to learn a language, they say and build your vocabulary, they say stuff like use the word in a sentence. My approach to these motifs is that approach. We're going to use them in a sentence. Well, what I did with the 251 licks was write 2 pages of sentences with a variety of different motifs in them. I'll tell you what, the students like them. They like them a lot. I think they like them a lot more than what I call my motif sheets. So that's why I started. I originally wrote it for my student in California. Then I started giving it to other students that were at that same skill level. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, if you guys let me know, it doesn't have to be here on the chat. You can email me or something and let me know if that's something you might be interested in. But yes, this is the kind of thing that will give you more language so you can learn. I have another student that takes email lessons with me, and he's been taking the Omnibook and taking his favorite parts and transposing them into the different keys. So that's one way that you can get the jazz language going in your solos. Now, it does take some time to get that going, because the way if you were taught by other jazz teachers, everything is about what notes you play over what chords. I don't teach that. I think when you learn that way, what you're doing is just playing a bunch of notes. It doesn't sound good. And in fact, a lot of times when that's how you play, the stuff you play could all be right notes. This is one of the most bizarre things about jazz education. You could play all the right notes and it sounds wrong. Why is that? A lot of times it can be because the timing was off, right? So maybe you put all the chord tones on the upbeat and the other notes on the downbeat. It could be something like that, but I think it's probably more psychological than that. But the point is that a lot of people can do what the jazz educators say and play all the right notes, and it still sounds terrible. This is something that does happen. And that's because it's not notes. That's not what jazz improvisation is. It's not about playing notes. And so when we do, I like to tell my students, whatever it is that you're thinking, that's what the audience is hearing. And if all you're thinking about is what notes am I supposed to play, all they're going to hear is what notes are you supposed to play. If you're thinking scales, they're gonna hear scales. If you're thinking patterns, they're gonna hear patterns. You want to get rid of that, then you start approaching it more motivically. Think about it. If the motifs are the words, if the motifs are the equivalent of words, then every time you play a solo using motifs, you are literally speaking to your audience. And that never gets old. That never gets old. I've seen some phenomenal musicians in concert that, yes, what they play is impressive. But then why is it? So is it impressive enough? Let's ask that question. Is it impressive enough? Why is it that the people in attendance for that concert are looking at their watches? Why are they wondering, when is this over? And I'm going to tell you why I think it's happening. I think they're looking at their watches because all they're hearing is a bunch of notes. And yes, you can be impressed with the notes. You can be impressed with how fast they play. You can be impressed with the range and flexibility and all that stuff. You can be impressed with all of that and still not have them touch your heart. But when you speak through the horn, through the motifs, you will touch their hearts. And they won't get tired of hearing it. That's my take on it. If you're thinking scales, don't get me wrong. I do believe scales are important. Scales are what give us, the scales give us ear training. That's the biggest thing. A lot of people will say scales give us technique. I think technique is kind of a waste of time. Ear training takes so much longer to perfect than technique. Ear training is a lot more difficult and time consuming. So when I'm playing the scales, that's my mind shifted, I guess, about when I'm doing the tonalization studies, right? Because I cycle through, I don't know, at least a dozen different scale types. I'm cycling through all of them. And I switched my thinking because there's so many of them, and sometimes in the more advanced patterns, my fingers might be a little sluggish. I have to slow down a little bit. But what I discovered was that if my ear remembers everything about how it sounds, the fingers don't forget. Keep that in mind. If your ear remembers, your fingers don't forget. So yes, we don't. If you were my student, we wouldn't be talking about which scales to play. And we might have something like that if that came up. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like if you were going to play one of those tunes like Freddie the Freeloader, right? We might talk about the Mixolydian scale. Personally, I don't teach that tune to my students until much, much later because I want them to understand this stuff first. You can play motivically over a tune like that, but you can't play modal over all that other stuff. You know, the guys that teach you to do the modes on a non-modal tune, that's messed up. That's just messed up. They're trying to get you to think harder than what's necessary to actually sound good. So, Angela says, luckily, I studied singing before I started to learn to play the trumpet, and it helped a lot. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Movable dough is the best way to learn ear training, in my opinion. Um, that's how I learned. I tried to do fixed dough, but it's it's a mess for me. There are guys I know that do very well with it, but for me, the movable dough is much better. Any other questions? Any other questions? So I hope that helped, Larry. Um, I'm not telling people not to learn scales. Obviously, I've published books and books and books of scale books, um, and I practice scales all the time. It's not that the scales are bad. It's just that they're not meant to be used in your solos. That's not how it's supposed to work. If you use the scales in your solos, that's all the people are going to hear. I know I'm repeating myself. Any other questions? All right. Well, maybe we'll shut it down. I'll give you a few more minutes. Um, Good news, my headache is almost gone. This is the longest headache. I don't get headaches as a general rule. And I do think what happened is I got some sort of very strange infection. You can actually see some of the weird marks up here. That's where the headache was, but it also put like little bumps on my head. Larry asks, is it a good idea to learn a different instrument along the way? That's really a personal thing. That really is a personal thing. Um, you know that the legend is that when Miles Davis got to uh, New York, it was, I believe, Dizzy Gillespie that told him he needed to start practicing piano. So there are some jazz educators, because of that tradition, that believe you should learn piano for, they say, for the harmony stuff. Um, I think it's more than just that. So yes, there are some. I have friends that play piano, drums, and bass, and in fact, I think it was um, Clifford Brown who was kind of famous for doing that. He played all the rhythm section instruments. So yes, um, there is background for that. Nathan, hello, Nathan. Nathan says, what are some ways to stay moving and motivating and playing the trumpet? You know, I think the best motivation is when you make progress. That's by far the best motivation. By far is when you can see the progress you're making. So, one way to do that is to document where you are now so that months from now you can look back and say, wow, look at how much I've grown. If you can find uh, older recordings of yourself, listen to those and look at how far you've come. But that's the thing is nobody wants to keep pounding away at this stuff and never getting anywhere. Nobody wants that. That's one of the things that will make you not want to practice and not want to progress is because you think you're not going to progress. Because if you've never progressed before, how would you? You know, I had a student this week who told me that he remembers, he's, you know, of course we all still get frustrated, but he remembers when he used to get frustrated on music that was a lot easier than what he's frustrated with now. And that's how you stay motivated, is you look at how far you've come. And you do that in whatever way that you can. Well, that's one of the reasons why I like to be more organized. Because if you document stuff, then you can look back at your documentation and say, well, this is how far I've come. Larry says, when I was learning guitar, my teacher asked me if I played a wind instrument because I would breathe. He said he could hear it in my phrasing. That's right, I've heard that before. Angela says, I am a choral vocalist, and that's why I studied sight singing. I had a love for trumpet and started to play the trumpet. Singing and trumpet playing is a fabulous combination. That's absolutely, yeah, that's good. You know, you can actually get a gig, right? Sing the heads and play the improv. Karen says, I struggle with motivation too. Playing with others in enjoyable groups helps. That's right too. That's right too. That's I'll have to second that. But you know what? When you let me be honest about this, right? Because I myself over the last year have struggled with motivation. And you know, in our culture, the trumpet culture, that's supposed to be a huge taboo, right? The teacher is supposed to be so sold out to music that he would never say such a thing. But I'm not like that. I like honesty. I like priorities and stuff like that. So it's been very difficult for me. I'm practicing again now, but it was very difficult for me to get back into it because I was just so disappointed with all this dialysis stuff and all that. I got to this point where I'm thinking, what's the point? What's the point? Why would I even practice? Why would I do this? And I started, I don't know, I started a book. This probably won't ever get published, but I started like journaling about the difficulties I was having getting motivated to practice. And I even, prayed about it. And that actually helped a lot. And I'm not going to tell you what the what finally snapped and made me start wanting to get serious about this again. It's very personal. But I can tell you that it was spiritual. And I have a video. Hello, Seppo, nice to see you. I have a video series about comeback trumpet playing. I call it my comeback trumpet player's guide. And in it, I think it's the second video where we talk about practice with a purpose. You have to have a reason to practice. And you have to ask yourself, this is what I asked the people in the video to do. Ask yourself, why did you start playing the trumpet again? Because the answer to that question is your motivation. And what happens a lot of time, I talk about this in the video, what happens a lot of time is that people get sidetracked from their purpose. And one of the examples I give is someone that's just playing for fun. They had fun playing when they were younger. They want to have fun playing now. If that's you and you want to have fun and you're playing with an ensemble that's too serious, so serious that it's no longer fun for you, might want to consider getting out of that ensemble. Because I'll tell you what, that will sap all of your motivation out. It will take all of your motivation away. But it's not just because it's not fun. Don't get me wrong. That example I used only because there are people that I teach that's all they want. They just want to have fun playing the trumpet. There are other people I teach who are hardcore serious. So the answer to them is going to be the other way around. If they have an ensemble that doesn't take it serious enough, they should quit. Because it's going to be very difficult for them to motivate themselves to practice. Two trumpet players, they could both be the same level, with two different ways of approaching the motivation. One needs more fun, the other one needs more seriousness. You see how that works? So yes, I do believe in practicing with a purpose. I do believe in acknowledging what your reason is for wanting to learn the trumpet. There are people that do it for religious reasons. They want to be in their church orchestras or whatever. There's people who want to go pro. There's people, we get all kinds of different reasons. Your reason needs to be well documented and followed. If you have lost track of the reason why you're playing, it's time to take a look. Why did you start playing trumpet again? Okay. So, Nathan, ask yourself that. You don't have to answer it here. Ask yourself, why are you playing the trumpet? This doesn't just apply to the comeback players. Ask yourself, why do you play the trumpet? Is it just for fun? See, there's people who enjoy it, but not because it's fun. Right? So you just have to know what it is for you. Now, there is this thing called deferred gratification, where you have more fun later because you took it serious now. That's not the same thing as what I'm talking about. There are ensembles that you can play in that really do take it too serious. That is a thing. Okay? There are people or ensembles that take it too serious, and there is no deferred gratification in that context, because they are taking it too serious, and it ruins it. It ruins the fun for everyone. Seppo says, some will answer this. My parents forced me to. That's right. That's right. I don't have a problem with that, really. I don't even think we should teach them differently. The students that are being forced to play, I think that should play out. Sometimes, by the way, sometimes the parents know better about this stuff than we do. And it could very well be that being more serious about the trumpet could be exactly what makes them stick with it. So it's not, none of this stuff is straightforward, right? None of this stuff is just automatically one way or the other. There's a lot of complexity involved here. So anyway, very good. We did it again. Thank you guys once more for hanging out and asking your questions. We'll do it again next week. And then I do have, like I said, I do have new videos coming out that I've already recorded, and a whole new line of some of the hymn stuff. So, all right, well, we'll see you next time. Have a great weekend, and God bless you.